And right now at 5, IMPD is investigating another police shooting. Officials say this brings the count to 13 this year.
Police say the suspect had fled from a traffic stop and tried to hide in a tree. News 8's Camila Fernandez has more on the case.
Several hours after the shooting, you could still see police tape and investigators trying to figure out what led to the confrontation.
I got up and saw all the police and the tape and reporters and whatnot in the alley, and it's just like trying to make sense of it all.
According to IMPD, the shooting happened early Tuesday morning at 25th Street and Columbia Avenue intersection. Police say the officer was patrolling the area when he heard gunshots and noticed a car was speeding. They say the suspect was pulled over. After speaking with the officer, the suspect went back inside and drove away.
He saw a vehicle in that area traveling a high rate of speed. That would raise suspicion for most of us. He made a traffic stop. That's what we ask our officers to do. And this person decided to flee from the officer. And that's a problem.
A short time later, officers found the suspect hiding in a tree behind some houses, but he refused to come down. That's when police say he tried reaching into his pocket and was shot. He was taken to a local hospital in critical but stable condition.
At some point, the suspect made a comment to the point of, "I'm going in my pocket, kill me." And one officer discharged his firearm, striking the suspect.
Well, it's kind of scary because you never know if somebody might try to run up in your house if they're running from the police, you know? That's why I always keep my doors locked.
According to IMPD, that's the 13th police shooting so far this year. IMPD says they had 10 police shootings in 2022, but they had even a larger amount in 2015. That year, they had 20 shootings involving officers.
Those are things we have to try to evaluate and determine, is there some trend here? We don't know. We don't know why, we're seeing these number of shots.
News tonight at 5 o'clock.
In the last 2.5 hours, we've learned the man Metro Police shot in a tree after a traffic stop has died. The Marion County coroner was the first to report the death of 35-year-old Darcel Edwards this afternoon. Metro Police shared the news about 40 minutes later.
Police officers told Edwards to come out of the tree Tuesday morning. They warned him not to reach several times. Police tell us an officer shot him after he told them he was going into his pocket to kill them. Officers told us Edwards was wearing a holster, but police never found a gun at the scene or in that area.
Part of the officer-involved shooting in Indianapolis. Mr. Allen, how you doing today?
Fine. Thank you, Mr. Walker.
I do apologize, under these circumstances that, we're speaking to you. You never think that it's going to happen to you, especially as a former chief of police, an officer-involved shooting and your nephew. Tell us a little bit about what you know about the situation.
Only what was captured in the news and what the family has said, that there was some type of disturbance involving gunfire. Police was called. The victim told the police that his car had been hit by somebody, and then he drove off, according to the police. The police did not pursue, and the officer, while driving around or whatever he was doing, found the car that was involved in this disturbance in a tree. And that's where they found my nephew in a tree. The officer got there. Apparently, there was more than just that one that was there. And was trying to talk him out of the tree. And next thing we know, he wound up dead.
Now, you can hear on one of the Nextdoor Ring apps of the homeowner that owned the tree that he was, in, obviously. And the officers were seeming to kind of guide her towards saying that he was trying to commit suicide by cop, and they thought he had a gun up there. And she emphatically told them that, no, he asked to call his mother and don't kill me. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, if that's what was said, and that's what, either way, there were other ways that I believe that we could have come to a resolution that wouldn't have involved death or threat. But why that officer didn't take that step, I don't know. It may be due to the lack of training. It may be due to the systemic racism that exists, not only with that police department, but with others.
Now, training. As a former police officer, what type of training? What are you taught to do? Someone is fleeing the scene of an accident. You don't know what the circumstances are. It was obviously an auto accident. It wasn't a robbery. So they wouldn't expect to chase somebody down who was armed. So once they found him and saw him in a tree, what is the procedure from what you were taught?
Well, again, you have to size up each one of those situations. And let me back up a little bit. Most training, there are a little over 3,000 police agencies just in the state of Texas. However, most of these police agencies are taught basically the same way. And that may be a problem also. When I say taught the same way, very little diversity is training is involved in that. But you're supposed to make sure that the public is safe. That's your whole job. And then, of course, in order to make the public safe, you have to make sure that you're safe. But you have to be able to think these things through and come up with a conclusion that works for everyone, where you get to go home safe, and the person that you're trying to either rescue, to whatever the incident may be, bring that person down. In other words, you have to de-escalate if it was to that point. Again, there was not enough information to say that the victim himself, Darcel, was at the point to where he was going to hurt anyone.
Now, Darcel, again, your nephew, Darcel Leon Edwards, it's kind of eerie, the fact that his last name is Edwards, and you happen to be the community relations liaison for Balk Springs back in, 2018, 2017 or so, when
Yes.
when Jordan Edwards was killed by the Balk Springs police officer, Mr. Oliver. Are there any similarities to these cases outside of both last names are Edwards? And I assume that, your nephew was shot in the neck with a rifle. I don't know if it was a firearm or what, but it seems like there are some eerily similar situations.
The only, again, not knowing all the facts, and the question was, were there any similarities? Yes. And that is, in my opinion, the officer overreacted in both instances. The one that I was close to, that I know most of the facts on, yes, that officer did overreact. Yes, that officer did lie. He lied to his commanders and he lied to himself. From what I can understand here, that most of the information to that chief in Indianapolis did not get to that point where all the information was put out. So that's where you lose the trust of the public. The chief could have waited until the information was completed or most information was got, or simply say, we don't have that information yet.
Now,
So,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, do you have any thoughts on the fact that when the initial stories came out, they only listed your nephew as a suspect, and then on the following day during the news conference, they still didn't mention his name. They mentioned the 8 other killings that have happened since August. So are they lumping him together? Are you fearing that they're maybe lumping your nephew together, and that, selfishly speaking, you want justice for Darcel Leon Edwards? You don't know the other cases or what were involved, but your nephew, you're seeking justice for him.
Let's go back to protocol. This may be the reason why I'm not defending him, but this may be the reason why the chief did not mention his name. His family may not have been notified at that time, and they try to notify the family members if there's a killer, notify the family member before they release it to the news. And I was saying earlier about the training, most agencies do the same training. But if you notice that in most cases where you have officers involved shooting, and when they involve people of color, it's the same thing. So it goes back to that training. What do you do to try to stop that person? What do you do to stop that incident in itself? And in most cases, and I think one of those 9 members they talked about was shot in the back. If that person is running away from you, there's no need to use deadly force on him. I mean, if he's leaving the scene, there's no need in using deadly force. Even if Darcel had a gun, I still think there have not been one found yet. Is that correct?
Yes, there hasn't been one found yet.
then where was the need to use deadly force?
Well,
you were all taught in those scenarios as a police officer, and they'll teach you this in every seminar, in every class, in every rookie school you go to. You find cover and concealment, and then you try to de-escalate the problem. You don't want to take anybody's life unless your training comes from somewhere else. When you have a mindset that all people of color are criminal, all people of color are guilty of something. And I noticed the next thing they came out with that Darcel had been arrested for some drug violation. What does it have to do with his death?
Yeah, and and the propaganda machine starts. Shortly thereafter, there was a record released from 2014 where he's supposed to have some arrests for some minor drug thing, which less than a year. That has nothing to do with it. But again, the chief indicated that they thought that he wanted to die, suicide by cop. I've never seen anybody that wanted to die run up a tree and hide.
From the information I know of, that whole situation could have been handled differently. From all the information that I know of, that situation could have brought Darcel some help instead of a bullet.
Now, you're from 1969. You're the first black police officer in McKinney, Texas. And it was a very volatile time then. Vietnam, civil rights. Kennedy had been killed. 63, but Robert Kennedy had been killed the year before. And Martin Luther King had been killed the year before. And here you are, a black officer, the first in McKinney, Texas. How the rules of engagement, have they changed from 1969 to 2023?
Apparently not. And I say that because there's no, from what I can see, and again, I've been in a situation where deadly force could have been used. I've been in a situation where, actually, I was on the SWAT team, developed and trained the people on SWAT in the city of Garland. But along with that training, I trained Dallas police officers, which is a much larger city than Garland. I trained the sheriff's department in Dallas County, which had, at that time, more officers than we did. And we trained how to de-escalate. And this is back in the 70s and the 80s. We trained, because I was part of that training. What they were doing in the academy was not that. And up until about 1970 and 1980, even when you went to the range, that target that you shoot at was black. Until somebody protested and they started using an image of John Dillinger, I believe. But until then, that target is black. So in that mindset of these police officers, anything that's black got to be a criminal. So that's that part of that training that they do. And the same training that they were doing 40 years ago, they're doing now. And they're not training the officer themselves to think first, use that cover and concealment before you use that weapon. Be ready, but not ready to kill.
So what in your mind is stop the threat?
You have a few seconds to evaluate and to do an assessment. A few seconds. If your mind is set that you go in as if you're hunting a deer, you get a spot on that deer and you shoot that deer, you kill that deer, that takes care of it. But if you have your mindset to protect yourself and that person that you were trying to arrest, then that's where that mindset needs to be. How do you get there? It takes a little bit of compassion. It takes a little bit of knowledge about yourself. And it takes a little bit of taking that racism out of your thoughts.
Now, when you say taking racism out of the thoughts, and you did mention animal, you use the example. I have an image of my mind of a black man in a tree with at least 5 or 10 cops, as I saw, all white, down there.
Stop right there. Stop right there. Stop. Where's the threat?
The threat is up in the tree.
Where's the threat? The threat's not in the tree.
The threat is on the ground.
Thank you. There's no evidence that Darcel fired any shots at anybody. There's no evidence that there was a firearm there. The officer said, or someone said that he had a firearm and said, "Kill me."
Don't shoot him. Yeah. That was okay to shoot him, too. There's a lot going on. He said, "Don't kill me. I got to call my mama." I not the one time here and there say. You'll be here in the video. I hope y'all do it when you see.
Is that right from what information we have now?
Yes, correct.
So The guy that did the shooting, the officer that did the shooting, was on a hunt.
Right. That's what I see. I see a man in the tree, a black man, and I'm not making comparisons to apes or anything, but I'm sorry. That's what I see.
And my question would be, at this point, they brought up Darcell's drug use. On the officer that did the shooting, did we talk about his disciplinary act? Did they talk about anything about, and that usually doesn't come out until the trial begins, if there's a trial. Did they talk about any disciplinary act on his part? Did they talk about any use of threat or any use of force on his part? No, that's part of the case too.
Well, drug use is not a death sentence, though, last time I heard.
It is not. And the person that's being threatened by drug use is the individual that's using it. So what was the threat on the officers?
Well, how's the family holding up?
They had the whole system, they had the whole area there contained. Where was he going to go?
Nowhere. Up a tree.
Yeah. And the family is dealing with it, like we all do. We're dealing with it. And even though Darcell hasn't been a part of this family because of the distance between the family, we've kept in touch with him. At least my sisters and my brother, and his dad has been keeping up with him. And in fact, I think my sister's on her way up there now. She's not already arrived. So we do that, and we pass along information.
Now, his dad still lives in Dallas, correct?
Say again?
His dad still lives in Dallas.
Yes.
Well, Mr. Allen, I will say this. My condolences to you and your family. I hope there's justice in the end for him. You never find yourself on the receiving end of something like this. And I hate that you ever have to have that feeling. In closing, I will say the beard looks good on you. You're looking real distinguished there. I mean, you look like you're getting younger. Now, when you retired, I saw you sitting on the porch in a wheelchair with some overalls on. And you look like you was fit to retire. I don't know what's happened, but you're invigorated. You're looking good. You're feeling good. Marcel, your wife, better watch out. Marcella. She better watch out.
You know, us old people can't do nothing but get older.
Well, but so you aging well with like a fine wine.
Thank you, sir.
You have a good day.
Prosecute the police.